Hi, I'm Katie Piper and I'm super excited to mark the launch of Disney's Ultimate Princess celebration by reading from their brand new story collection, Tales of Courage and Kindness. This global campaign uses the stories of Disney's beloved princesses to inspire courage and kindness. I'm going to read Cinderella's story, which I hope you'll enjoy. Let's begin. A Sweet Salon. Sweep the floors, polish the silverware, fluff the pillows, hem the dresses. Cinderella's morning was filled with chores as usual. But she couldn't stop smiling as she worked. Her stepmother, Lady Tremaine, was hosting a salon at their home that afternoon. A salon was a special monthly event where Lady Tremaine invited the most gifted women in the kingdom to the chateau to share their talents. Cinderella loved humming along to their beautiful musical performances, gasping at their dramatic readings and swooning over their sing-song poetry. Cinderella didn't even mind serving tea and finger sandwiches while she got to watch such fascinating performances. Cinderella had been so inspired by these talented women that she had written and memorized a poem of her own. She dreamed of one day performing it aloud, hopefully at that day's salon. All morning she'd been mustering up enough courage to ask her stepmother. She was just waiting for the right opportunity. As she swept the hallway floor, Cinderella began practicing her poem. Starlight, moonlight, this calls for a duel, Drizella yelled from the music room down the hall. Drizella and Anastasia were Cinderella's stepsisters. They were practicing a scene from a play they would be performing at the salon. Drizella's voice sounded hoarse from reciting her lines so many times. "Not on my watch," Anastasia shouted. "Stop, I need more emotion," Lady Tremaine demanded. "How am I to believe this scene if I can't sense what your character is feeling? Do it again." "I can't do this many more times, Mother," Drizella complained. "My throat hurts." Lady Tremaine rolled her eyes. "From the top, girls." Drizella cleared her throat. "This calls for..." She stopped and wrapped a hand around her neck. "My throat," was all she managed to say before breaking into a coughing fit. "I said from the top, Drizella," Lady Tremaine demanded. "This calls for..." Drizella tried before having another coughing attack. Lady Tremaine threw her hands in the air. "All the ladies will be watching your performance and judging you. Judging all of us," she said to her daughters. "Go to your rooms and rest up. I'm expecting an excellent performance from you this afternoon." Drizella and Anastasia started marching out of the music room just as Cinderella walked past them dreamily. The stepsisters shared a suspicious look. What was Cinderella smiling about? They stepped into the hallway and eavesdropped as Cinderella approached Lady Tremaine. "Stepmother, I wrote a poem I'd like to perform at the salon today," Cinderella said. "Is that so?" Lady Tremaine asked. "I've been practicing very hard and..." "Let's hear it," Lady Tremaine said. "Starlight, moonlight," Cinderella recited the poem perfectly for her stepmother. Her voice was clear and strong. She didn't forget a single word, and her poem was beautiful. Anastasia and Drizella huffed in disbelief. They had no idea Cinderella was so good at reciting poetry, and they didn't like it. Lady Tremaine looked down her nose at Cinderella. "If all of your chores are done, if the tea service is complete, and if there is time at the end, I might allow you to read one poem." Cinderella was shocked, and her stepsisters even more so. Before Cinderella could see them, Anastasia and Drizella stormed down the hallway towards their bedrooms, stunned that their mother was letting Cinderella get some attention at the day's salon. "Oh, thank you, stepmother," Cinderella said, trying to mask her excitement. "And make sure you look presentable today," Lady Tremaine added. "No dirty work clothes. Change into your formal serving dress and fix your hair nicely." "Of course, stepmother," Cinderella beamed. "I won't let you down." Cinderella walked down the hallway with an even bigger smile. She was hopeful that her dream would come true this afternoon. But first she had to finish up her chores and take care of Drizella's sore throat. Cinderella ran into the kitchen to fetch a cup of hot water with a lemon. That always made Cinderella's throat feel better. Her stepsisters weren't always friendly, but she knew how important this performance was to both Anastasia and Drizella. With any luck, Drizella's throat would heal quickly with some rest and a warm drink. Drizella was pouting, lying under the covers. Anastasia stood staring at herself in the mirror. She was brushing her hair over and over again while practicing her lines. Cinderella rapped on the door before she stepped inside. "What do you want?" Anastasia asked. "Here," Cinderella said as she walked towards Drizella. "This might help." Drizella grabbed the teacup from Cinderella's hands and then sipped the hot water and lemon slowly. "I hope you feel," Cinderella began to say. "You can leave now," Anastasia said as she pushed Cinderella out of the door. "We need to rest our voices for this afternoon's performance. I can't do my scene without Drizella." "Can you believe her?" Anastasia said to Drizella as she shut the door. Drizella was too busy drinking from her teacup to answer. "And she thinks she can perform a poem at the salon today when we might not even be able to do our scene. It's not fair." Drizella opened her mouth to interject. What she wanted to say was, "Of course we'll be able to do our scene." But what came out was nothing. She grabbed her throat, she opened her mouth again and whispered, My voice." And then she started coughing again. "Drizella, speak up." Anastasia was panic-stricken. "Talk louder." Drizella shook her head as she continued to cough. "I can't do my scene without you. I'll look ridiculous." Anastasia paced the room. "We must perform today. Everybody is expecting it. We're the ladies of this house." Drizella held up the teacup with a grimace on her face. She pretended to be serving the tea and then pointed towards the door Cinderella had just stepped through. Anastasia gasped as she realised what Drizella was trying to tell her. "Do you think, Cinderella, what did she put in that tea?" She stormed towards the door, prepared to charge after Cinderella, but then she stopped. "Wait," Anastasia said. "She's just jealous of us. She wants to make sure she has time for her stupid little poem. If she tried to ruin our performance, then we're just going to have to ruin hers." Drizella smiled wickedly in agreement. Cinderella's sweet mouse pals, Perla and Jack, were taking a post-lunch nap after an adventurous encounter with Lucifer, Lady Tremaine's mischievous cat. They had successfully gathered enough corn kernels to feed all the other mice that lived in the chateau. But now they were exhausted. They sank cosily into a basket of soft fabric scraps in the corner of Cinderella's room. When Cinderella returned after finishing her chores, they'd tell her all about it. The door creaked. Jack opened one eye, but it wasn't Cinderella. "There it is," Anastasia whispered. She was panting after climbing up the long staircase that led to Cinderella's bedroom. She and Drizella elbowed each other as they entered, the hoops of their fancy dresses barely squeezing through the door. Anastasia quickly grabbed a dress that was hanging from the changing screen, the outfit that Cinderella had set out to wear to the salon. Drizella snatched two other dresses that were folded in a basket right next to Jack and Perla. Perla woke Jack, whose eyes shot open. Perla swiftly covered her friend's mouth so he wouldn't say anything. Jack quickly realised what was going on. He saw Drizella grab Cinderella's only clean apron too. Her clothes! Her clothes!" Jack managed to squeak out, despite Perla's best efforts. Luckily, Anastasia and Drizella had already turned their backs and were heading out of the door. As they elbowed their way back out, a purple feather fell out of Drizella's hair. "What are they doing? Where did they go?" Jack asked Perla. "They stole Cinderella's nice things. What do we do?" Perla asked. "I wait. I tell Cinderella as soon as she gets here," Jack said. "You go. You follow them." "Okay." Perla ran through a crack in the wall while Jack retrieved Drizella's feather. He sat and stared at the door, wishing Cinderella would hurry. Where was she? It was getting late. A little while later, Cinderella ran through the door, quickly closing it behind her while removing her dirty apron. "I'm running behind," Cinderella said aloud to herself. Now where is my Cinderella-y, Cinderella-y? Jack jumped up and down and waved the feather. They stole your dress. They took all of your clothes. Who? Cinderella ducked down and picked up Jack. She studied the purple feather. Anastasia, Drizella. Now, why would they? Cinderella trailed off and set Jack gently on her vanity before taking a seat. She looked in the mirror. Her dress was dirty, her hair was frizzled, and she could hear carriages pulling up to the chateau. The guests were arriving already. Lady Tremaine would not allow Cinderella to serve her guests in dirty work clothes. How could she look presentable without the dress that Anastasia and Drizella had stolen? Not only would she let Lady Tremaine down, but if Cinderella couldn't attend the salon, then she definitely couldn't perform her poem. Oh, Jack, Cinderella said, I was really looking forward to the salon. This was my chance to speak up and have my voice heard. The message in this poem is so important to me. Jack felt sad for Cinderella. She'd worked so hard cleaning. She'd worked so hard writing and memorizing her poem. She always worked so hard and never got rewarded. Before he could say anything, he heard footsteps charging up the spiral staircase that led to Cinderella's room. The door burst open. Get up, child! Why are you not dressed? Lady Tremaine hissed. Anastasia and Drizella fluttered behind her, eager to watch Cinderella get into trouble. My formal serving dress is missing, stepmother, Cinderella said as she stood. How could you misplace one of your few dresses you own? Lady Tremaine looked around the room as Anastasia sniggered. Cinderella wiped a smudge on her skirt. If you just give me some extra time, I'm happy to clean up the dress I'm wearing. Not a chance, Anastasia scoffed. Lady Tremaine sneered and turned to her daughters. You two need to greet the guests while I deal with this, she told them. Repeat after me. Welcome to our chateau. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to our chateau, Anastasia repeated. But when Drizella opened her mouth, only the faintest whisper came out. Drizella, speak up, Lady Tremaine said. Drizella opened her mouth. Nothing came out. You've lost your voice. Lady Tremaine threw her hands up into the air. Why didn't you tell me? She glared at Anastasia. Mother, Anastasia started, but Lady Tremaine wasn't listening. She paced the room, looking from Cinderella to Drizella and back again. Drizella, out of your dress. Give it to Cinderella. And Cinderella, give your work dress to Drizella. Drizella's mouth dropped open. But Mother, Anastasia yelled. You can't expect Drizella to attend the salon wearing that old thing. Without a voice, Drizella isn't going to the salon at all. Drizella, you need to rest. Head straight to your room once you've changed. Anastasia, you'll perform both parts in your play now. Anastasia and Drizella looked at each other with wide eyes. Their plan had backfired. Stealing Cinderella's clothes had not helped them at all. In fact, it had made things worse, much worse. Anastasia couldn't perform both parts. She could barely perform her own lines. And now Drizella wouldn't even be able to attend. Meanwhile, Cinderella got to wear a beautiful dress and go to the salon and possibly even perform her own poem. But Mother, I can't do both roles, Anastasia cried. You don't have a choice. I expect you and Cinderella in the salon in 5 minutes, Lady Tremaine said, starting toward the door. And Anastasia, fix your hair. Anastasia reached for her head and felt that her feather was missing. Looking for this? Cinderella said, handing over the purple feather. It ended up in my room somehow. Anastasia's eyes grew wide as she grabbed the feather. Then she quickly turned around and followed her mother down the stairs. Drizella sneered as she changed out of her dress and handed it to Cinderella. The next time you and Anastasia want to borrow my dresses, just ask, Cinderella said to Drizella. Of course, she knew that her stepsisters hadn't really borrowed the dresses. They had stolen them to hurt her. But I do expect them to be returned to me after the salon. Gisella couldn't say anything, so she slipped into Cinderella's work dress and disappeared down the stairs in a huff. Cinderella looked at herself in the mirror. She'd always admired Gisella's green gown, but never dreamed she'd have the chance to wear it. But she couldn't dwell on that. She quickly brushed her hair and pinned it up. She needed to get downstairs to prepare the tea for the guests. She would only be able to perform her poem at the salon if it started on time. "Good luck, Cinderella," Jack said. "Perla and I will find your missing clothes. I'll go help her now." "Thank you, Jack. You're a good friend," Cinderella said as she shut the door and hurried down the steps. The ladies of the kingdom had already taken seats in the padded chairs and couches arranged around the music room. Cinderella carefully delivered tea while the guests took turns performing. One woman played a happy melody on the flute. As Cinderella served the finger sandwiches, another guest read an excerpt from an adventure story that made Cinderella's heart flutter. The next woman sang a sweet lullaby while Cinderella cleaned up the plates. While she refilled the teas, she overheard fascinating conversations about literature and new inventions from faraway places. There was so much for her to learn. Finally, she began serving cake and cookies. Lady Tremaine stepped to the front of the room. "Thank you all for attending. It's getting late. The last performance of the day will be my daughter, Anastasia." Cinderella watched with a heavy heart as Anastasia scurried to the front of the room. Lady Tremaine's promise had been that Cinderella could perform if and only if there was time. And there wasn't enough time after all. Today was not the day that she would be able to recite her poem. At least she'd gotten to attend the salon, but it was a small consolation considering all the effort she'd put in. Anastasia looked around. Today I will performing a scene," she stammered nervously. She fidgeted with her dress, and as she tried to remember Gisella's first line, she took a deep breath. "This calls for a duel," she shouted, with her right arm pointed towards where Gisella would have been standing. Then she jumped to her right and she stuck up her left arm. "Not on my watch," she yelled, a little too loudly. Someone in the front row started giggling and a few others joined in. Anastasia jumped to her left and stuck up her right arm again. "I said stand back." Now the audience had the giggles and it turned into loud belly laughs. Anastasia turned bright red. She couldn't believe everyone thought her dramatic play was funny. Lady Tremaine backed into the corner of the room, unsure how to gracefully stop the play without embarrassing her daughter even more. Cinderella watched as Anastasia stumbled through more lines and jumped from side to side. She'd listened to her stepsisters rehearse this play repeatedly over the past few weeks. She had it memorized. She sat her tray down on a table and charged towards the front of the room. "I will never stand down." Cinderella projected Gisella's line towards the audience and then turned towards Anastasia. "I will always stand up for what I believe in, no matter what it takes." The laughing stopped. All of the women of the kingdom were enchanted by Cinderella's performance. Anastasia looked stunned, but continued with her lines. As the scene continued, Cinderella tried not to make eye contact with Lady Tremaine. She didn't know whether her stepmother would be relieved or furious. When Cinderella and Anastasia took a bow, the audience clapped and cheered. "Encore, encore," they cried. Lady Tremaine quieted the audience. "I'm so pleased that you enjoyed the performance by my lovely daughter Anastasia and my stepdaughter Cinderella," Lady Tremaine said. "If you insist, Cinderella has one more performance for us today." Cinderella's breath caught in her chest. She looked to Lady Tremaine, who nodded sharply to get on with it before she and Anastasia took a seat. Cinderella took a deep breath and began. "Starlight, moonlight, sunrise, sunset. Each day is a new beginning. The bad ones we can forget. Look for sun, not for rain. Look for joy, not for pain." Lady Tremaine glanced around as Cinderella continued. The audience was captivated by the poem. As Cinderella recited the last line, Lady Tremaine started to stand. But to her surprise, Cinderella continued. It seemed as if she was making up stanzas right there on the spot. Hands are for helping, not for harming. Speaking one's mind should not be alarming. You can't steal joy from one who strongly stands. With hearts wide open, happiness is in our hands. The audience burst into applause as she curtsied. Cinderella saw two ladies in the front row wipe tears from their eyes. She was proud of herself for speaking her mind and for standing up for herself when her stepsisters had tried to keep her down, and for being brave enough to ask Lady Tremaine for exactly what she wanted. She smiled at everybody, moved by their support. Cinderella turned to Anastasia as the ladies began exiting the music room. "Let's go check in on Drizella," she said. Anastasia nodded sheepishly. They found Drizella in her room, sulking in bed. She had changed into a nightgown and left Cinderella's dirty work dress in a pile on the chair, on top of Cinderella's missing dresses and clean apron. "My clothes," Cinderella said. "Remove these dirty rags from this room at once," Anastasia ordered. "I can't imagine how they got here. You need to take better care of your things." As Anastasia reached for the pile, Jack and Perla came crawling out of a dress sleeve. "Eat! Mice!" she screamed, chucking the clothes at Cinderella. Cinderella caught the pile, making sure Jack and Perla were safely tucked away in the sleeve. She considered confronting her stepsisters about stealing her clothes, but as she watched Drizella pouting over missing her performance and Anastasia shuddering from her encounter with the mice, she figured that they had already learned their lesson. So instead, she said, "Nice job today, Anastasia. And thank you, Drizella, for letting me borrow your dress. I'll return it after I've cleaned it." Then she walked out of the room with her head held high. Once she was in the hallway, she unfolded the dress sleeve and coaxed her mouse friends out. "Come here, you two. Are you all right?" "Of course, Cinderella," Jack said. Perla held up the dress sleeve. "We found your missing clothes." Cinderella chuckled. "Thank you for being so brave, Perla." "Cinderella," Lady Tremaine called down the hall. She'd just said goodbye to the last guest. Cinderella turned around, worried about what her stepmother had to say. She wouldn't be surprised if she was angry at her for performing alongside Anastasia. But it had been worth it. "The ladies want to hear another poem from you during the next month's salon," Lady Tremaine said flatly, "so be prepared." "Yes, stepmother," Cinderella said. I promise I won't let you down." Lady Tremaine walked away. "You did it, Cinderella," Jack said to Cinderella. "We knew you could," Perla added. Cinderella pulled a leftover cookie out of the pocket of Drizella's dress and handed it to the little mice. "Good things come to those who are kind," Cinderella said as she smiled at her mouse friends. "I certainly know that to be true." The end. Wasn't that a lovely story? So much to learn from Cinderella. To read more from the Tales of Courage and Kindness story collection, go to disneyprincessstories.co.uk.